For example, if you idolize sex and romance, if you put weight on that, you will burn with desire until the day you get married. And then you have the thought, well, hey, as long as I'm married, like, it's all done. Like, I mean, I won't have anything to worry about when it comes to that issue again. But once you're married, if you don't keep your passions in check, if you don't keep your desire in check, if your relationship doesn't measure up to the criteria you have set for it, then the idol of sex and romance will lead you into an affair where I will look somewhere else to satisfy that because the marriage didn't make it. The marriage wasn't enough. It couldn't sustain it. If you look to, again, idols lure you with desire. And when they can't satisfy that desire, you're the one left holding it. And it forces you then to go further looking for something that will satisfy that desire. If you idolize money, if you idolize financial security, if you put weight on that, you will work hard to earn more. But the reality is, as we all know, that hard work doesn't always get you what you want. It's not always successful. It's the best way to go, because if hard work doesn't get it for you and you idolize money, then you're going to begin cutting corners on your honesty. You're going to begin cutting corners on your integrity in order so that you can get more. And every time, the entire time, you are totally blind to the fact that that desire will never be satisfied when you keep running to the thing that you idolize. If you idolize approval and the opinions of others, you're going to put weight on that, then you're going to live in lies. And I have to admit, this one is by far the most frequent temptation for me as a pastor. Because the very first question I often get asked when somebody finds out I'm a pastor is this: how big is your church? That is, I can almost guarantee you that will be one of the top 2 questions I get asked. And in my desire to be seen as successful, it tells me, hey, just fudge the numbers. It'll be fine. They won't even know. And so I'm like, the temptation is, well, if everybody showed up, on the same day, we'd be like, 150, maybe 200 on a good day, right? What I know is that nobody ever shows up on the same day. Like, that is not how this works. Everybody has never shown up on the same day, right? It's about, it shifts. About a quarter to a third or more of the congregation changes out every single week, okay? But again, we want approval, and so we lie to project an image of what we think will gain us that approval. We lie about our marriage. We lie about our success at work. We lie about our sports achievements. We lie about our bank accounts. We lie about our accomplishments because we long to look better than we really are, so we lie to appear that we do. We don't often think about how giving something else the place that is rightfully God's has an impact on our behavior, but it does. And it's important that we see how this ends. Because if you think, well, this is kind of an extreme illustration of how this ends, I don't know. I think it's a pretty mild one, because James chapter 1 verse 15 says these desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. I don't think this is an extreme illustration. Our desires lead us to put ourselves in positions where we are carrying the weight of our idols, and that is a weight we were never designed to be able to handle. It's not in us. The biggest mistake you could make today, the biggest mistake you could make this morning, is to dismiss this message as if it's not applicable to your life. The Apostle Paul warned us against doing this very thing when he said, if you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. So take an inventory of your heart and your worship. Everyone worships something. What do you worship? Because when you place significant weight on something that cannot satisfy your soul dries out. The reason why so many believers have this sense of weariness and that our souls just hurt so deeply, the reason why we feel like there has got to be more to it than this is because there is. there is something infinitely greater, something infinitely more than the various idols that we somewhere, somehow have allowed to take root in our hearts. These things that we've been banking on to provide satisfaction to you, and they're not. And we wonder why. And now our soul is growing weary, longing for something that can actually satisfy. And if you're not there yet, and maybe some of you aren't there yet, you're still pursuing whatever it is this idol is that is in your life. Whatever it is that you think is going to give you the satisfaction that you long for. Whatever it is that you think is going to allow you to live a joyful and powerful life without God. If you're not at the point where you realize it's not going to satisfy, I promise you one day you'll get there. One day you'll get to that point. You'll realize this can never give me what I want. And here's the danger. Some of us will be so insistent, so determined, we'll just keep going, thinking satisfaction's right around the corner. I know it has never gotten me what I want to this point, but it's got to be just the next sale. It's got to be that next relationship. It's that next improvement. It's that next possession. And we think that it's just around the corner. And if I could only get... And what happens when you get that thing that you think is going to satisfy you? It doesn't. It's not enough. The goal line keeps moving. You're like, why? Because it can never satisfy the human soul. And so then we'll begin either just like pursuing it more, or we'll begin looking for another idol to satisfy what the old one couldn't. Hear me. When we place the weight of worship on something that cannot satisfy our soul, you are the one left carrying that weight. And when you're carrying that kind of weight, you know what I can't do when I'm carrying this weight? I can't lift my hands in worship to God. I can't. If I do, I'm going to cause damage. I'm going to hurt myself. I can't. My hands are occupied. The only way that I'm going to be able to lift my hands in worship to the one who is rightfully God and King of my life is to let the idol go. I have to say, no, this is not going to do it for me. I've got to let it go so that I can lift my hands in worship to the one true God. The author, Paul David Tripp, he talks a lot about idolatry and dealing with idols, and he says something profound about the only way to tear an idol down in your life. Since you worshiped your way into an idol, the only way to get out from underneath it is to worship your way out. It's to turn your worship from this thing to the one who rightfully deserves it. That's the only way to tear down an idol in your life. Hear me. True satisfaction will only ever be found in Jesus Christ. You'll never find it anywhere else. True satisfaction will require you to surrender your hold on your idols, drop the weight of them, and lift your hands in worship to God. And if you're not a follower of Jesus this morning, as we move into a moment of response, if you're not somebody who would say, hey, I'm a follower of Christ, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I want you to listen to me for just a moment. And I want you to, I know that this is asking for a lot, but I want you to trust me. I want you to hear me, because this is not Pastor Nick's ideas. This is not the ideas of some human philosopher. These are the words of God. Nothing that this life offers will ever satisfy the longing of a human soul. Nothing. Only Jesus can do that. And if you would decide in this moment, I'm going to choose to place my worship on the only one that can actually sustain the weight of my worship, then here's what God says. He says that you can be forgiven of your sin, which means all the wrongs you've ever done, God will take off of your account and place them onto the account of Jesus Christ as He hung on the cross and paid for all of sin. And He will take the perfect record that Jesus earned with His perfect life as the Son of God, living and fulfilling the law in every measure, and He will take it from Jesus and credit it to your account, making you holy and righteous before God. Paul describes it as becoming a new creation. So you're freed from the penalty of your sin, and you are given a new life with a fresh start. One that you could never earn on your own in a million lifetimes of good works. One that can only be received as a gift from God Himself. And with heads bowed and eyes closed across the room today, I simply want to offer an opportunity for anybody here this morning that would say, you know what, Pastor Nick, I'm not right with God, but I want to be. My account is still full of the debt of sin that I owe. But today I want it to be forgiven. I want to receive the gift of salvation that you're talking about, where my sin is washed away, removed completely from my account, and I am given a new life in Jesus Christ. And if that's you, I want you to recognize it's not something you earn, it's something you simply receive by faith, choosing to say, God, I need that. If that's where you're at this morning, would you simply raise your hand up and say, Pastor, just raise it up, wave it at me so that I see your hand. I'm not going to call you out. I'm not going to embarrass you, but simply as a sign of, God, I hear that, and God, I need that. I need to be forgiven of my sin. Anybody this morning that would say that's me, would you simply raise your hand right where you're at today? All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. If you raised your hand, here's what I want you to do today. I want you to take another step. That step is simply letting us know, I have made that decision. Maybe it was for the first time, or maybe it was simply to rededicate your life. Whichever position you're in, it doesn't matter. You're simply coming back to God, or if you're coming to Him for the first time, His arms are wide open. And He says, I love you. He says, I see your record of failure, and I exchange it for a record of perfection. I want you to take a step, and I want you to let us know that you've made that decision. And here's how you can do it. On the back of one of the connection cards, there's an option. You can just write your name on the front and then select on the back, hey, I'm accepting Christ for the first time, or I'm rededicating my life to Jesus. Why do I ask you to do that? Because it is important that you make a profession of faith. It's important that you say, hey, you know what? This is a commitment that I'm making. Whether it's the first time or it's a rededication, you're simply saying, God, I want somebody else to know about this. It gives some accountability. It helps us come alongside you and resource you. So please do that today, and then drop it in one of the boxes here in the sanctuary or in the lobby, or hand it in to Pastor Jeremy or myself after church today. If you're a follower of Jesus, I want you to hear me. I don't think we realize, I don't think we think about it, I don't think it's a conscious thought, but the reality is that the reason that we set up idols in our hearts is because we as followers of Jesus have believed a lie. We've believed a lie that God isn't good, that something else is better than God. And so we've given our hearts to this thing. We've set this idol up in our lives because we believe it is better than God. It will actually satisfy, and it won't. There is nothing better. There is no one better than Jesus. And if today you would choose to surrender your idols to Him, to drop the weight of the worship that you've been carrying because the idols that are in your life can't sustain them, and you would worship God with all that you are, you're going to begin to discover the truth of that He is infinitely better than anything that you could ever set up as an idol in your life. Everyone worships something. What are you worshiping? Maybe today you recognize one of the things, or maybe something I didn't even mention, that God, by His Spirit, has begun to open your eyes. Hey, you know what? This is an idol in your life. You've set it up as God. Not that you have removed God from your life entirely. You've just put Him in second place or third place or somewhere else. You've placed this thing on the throne of your life as if it is God. And by His Spirit, God has said, that's not God. But you're treating it as if it is. How many of you, in a moment of honesty and confession, would recognize, hey, there's something in my life that I have set up as an idol, and I see that. God, by His Spirit, has revealed that to me. Heads bowed, eyes closed across the room. If that's you this morning, would you simply raise your hand up? Thank you. All across this room. All across this room. All across this room. Guys, I say that because I want you to know you're not alone. Like, this is something that all of us battle in various points and various ways in our lives. This is not something that is unique to weak Christians. No. This is something that is part of the human condition. And it is something that we will only conquer once we name it and recognize it and call it out and choose to surrender it. Those of you who raised your hand, clearly God has already begun speaking to you. He's identified the idol. It's time to tear it down. For those of you that are like, you know what, I'm not exactly sure. I would have to give some prayer to this and really ask God to help me see things that are in my life that I'm treating as if it's God when it's not. Then I want you to take that step this week, and I want you to take it seriously and really give some thoughtful prayer to that and ask Him, Lord, open my eyes. Open my eyes. Because anything that is in your position that is not you doesn't belong, and it'll never satisfy. Jesus, I thank you so much for the illumination that your word gives to the condition of our hearts. And you don't do so in angry judgment and condemnation. You don't do so because you are petulantly kicking your feet like a child, demanding what is rightfully yours. You do so, you open our eyes to those things, because when we actually choose to recognize and surrender to the truth of your word, we will experience the life, the abundant life that you came to give us. You're not withholding something from us. You're offering something infinitely better to us. But as C.S. Lewis said, we're happy just playing in the mud when there is a treasure trove to be had. Lord, I pray that you would help us, every one of us, whether we recognize the idols in our lives or not. I pray that you would cause such a holy dissatisfaction within us to rise up, a dissatisfaction of these things taking the place as God in our lives, that we would choose to surrender and let go of the idols and put our worship on the only one that can sustain it. Lord, I ask for you to open our eyes to those things that we've set as God in our lives, and that we would choose to surrender them. We would choose to begin tearing them down. We would choose to transfer our worship, our focus, our attention off of those things and put it onto you, God. And in that, we will find freedom. And in that, the check engine light in our life is turned off over this issue. God, I thank you for that. I thank you for that. In Jesus' name, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you His favor and give you His peace. In Jesus' name, have an incredible week this week, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. God bless you guys, and we will see you next Sunday.